What you're seeing is a music video that has been 100% AI generated in just one afternoon. A director friend of mine was brainstorming a concept for a music video, and he was telling me how much the record label wanted to do for this new artist and how much of the budget just doesn't align with their expectations. So this is when I suggested to him, why don't we use AI to take care of the parts of this music video pitch that the budget just can't possibly afford? And we only filmed the easy parts. So I decided yesterday afternoon to show him and the label what you can do with AI in just a few hours, so that when he goes this morning to the label, he's not just pitching his idea with words, but he's actually showing something to them that they can look at. And the first thing that I did is I generated my character, my lead singer in MidJourney. And these are some of the images that I did to arrive to the character that eventually I settled on. But before I did any of this, the first thing that I did was to go to ChatGPT and input this prompt. And this is a document that I'm gonna leave in the video description, so by all means feel free to click in the link. It's totally free and this is gonna help you. So essentially what I'm telling ChatGPT is act as an expert AI content creator, and I'm gonna give you certain prompts and I want you to reply to me in a certain way. So once ChatGPT tells you that he understands that, you input this. I want you to create from now on a JSON prompt from any image description that I give you following the format below, because MidJourney does not understand JSON prompts, or the platforms do. So you need to feed MidJourney a prompt in natural language. And then once ChatGPT confirms that it's okay with that, all you need to do is input a brief description of what you want. And obviously, the more detail you give to ChatGPT, the better the prompt is gonna be. And this is how I built basically the entire music video, really. And you don't need to be restricted to ChatGPT. You can use other language models, like for instance, Kimi.com or DeepSeek. But in my case, I chose ChatGPT for this particular project. I've used other language models for other projects. And here is what I've got. So I literally copied this. I went into MidJourney and just take any photo. And as you can clearly see, if I hit the prompt, this is exactly the same prompt. And these are the settings that I use. And there are many images that I really like. I like this one, for instance, that was really good, but somehow it didn't suit the type of singer that I had in mind for this particular track. And a lot of the times I would go back to ChatGPT and say, look, the framing is too tight. I need to see the shoulders. I need to see more of the face, because this is not good to me. It's too up close, you know? So eventually he gave me something wider that I could use, and I started experimenting with different characters until I got to this one, and I really liked that one. So that became my first image. And then the workflow for this was to actually build the entire timeline in photographs. So I had an idea based on the music and the lyrics of what the action should be. Normally you would have some storyboards, but in my case, I only had one afternoon. And the idea behind this video, this short 1 minute, was that a woman would wake up, would rush onto a meeting with executives, would turn them off, and then would go off on a trip, and it turned out that is some music star that is on a stage. I wanted to showcase things that are pretty much unaffordable. So for instance, renting an airfield and shooting some scenes for a music video, that's totally out of the question. Blocking Leicester Square and having crowds and cheering them and going on to a concert hall, that's absolutely totally out of the question. That's just impossible to afford. So the first thing was to create all the images for this video in MidJourney. And from then on, all I did was follow the workflow that I just showed you. For instance, I would ask ChatGPT, give me a mid shot from the waist up of this woman walking through the streets of London. And I don't want you to think for a second that you input a prompt and every single image that MidJourney is gonna give you, they all work, because that's not the case. Character consistency is a real issue. And as you can clearly see here, the faces look very different from this image to this image, to that one, to that one. And the same applies to this. You have to get a lot of generations until you get the image of the face that you want. And eventually you narrow down and you refine the character until you more or less getting the same images. And this is another Omni reference that I took, this image. But this is the workflow that I followed. And eventually I filled my timeline with images, okay? And this is just still images. And let me just mute this. And as you can clearly see, the music is playing and it goes from one still to another still to another still, and then on and so on and so on. And this is just to get a sense of the editing, the pace of the music video, the shots that I'm gonna be doing. Then you move on to the next stage, which is generating the videos, okay, from the images. And for this, I started using Higgsfield. Now, what is great about this platform is that obviously it's fairly well priced, especially the Ultimate. This is very, very well priced. If you can afford the Creator, this is absolutely amazing, okay? But if you can take the annual at $29, this is fantastic. And Higgsfield gives you a lot of functionality, a lot of features. And this is for another project, will be for another video on how you can actually use AI for real life projects. Anyway, back to the video. And as you can clearly see, I started generating a lot of the footage here, okay? And I wish they would have a grid display and you don't have to go one by one through all of this. And as you can clearly see, the first image that I shot was basically silence, because there are two types of images that you want to generate in a music video. You got videos of the artist that is doing some kind of action, so they're not doing any lip syncing of any kind. And for that, you have pretty much free license to do whatever you want. But then you have the lip synced clips where she's singing to the camera. And for those, you need to create a workflow. You need to create a clean image and then put that image through a lip sync AI platform. And I'm gonna show you in a minute how I did it. But essentially I went to Higgsfield and I used Google Veo 3 and I started prompting my images. And some of them would come out really nice. Some of the ones would come out not looking great. And obviously you just choose the one that you like the best and then you gradually build your timeline, okay? Now, this is where some of the challenges started to pop up, okay? Because even though, as you can clearly see here, it looks like all the images were rendered correctly, that was not the case, okay? Higgsfield has deleted many of the renders that actually didn't go through. Veo 3 or Veo 3.1 is a heavily censored platform. So many times I would get a message saying this goes against our guidelines. And the same goes for Sora 2. Okay, Sora 2 is no different than this. And I would get so many of them that eventually I just got fed up and I went to OpenArt. And OpenArt is a much more forgiving platform. Okay, and as you can clearly see, I generated a fair amount of shots for this particular music video on OpenArt. And not because I didn't like what Higgsfield was giving me, it's because I could not get past some of the shots. It doesn't matter how I prompted some of the shots. If I was to prompt a lady on a tank top looking at herself in the mirror and applying makeup and doing maybe some patting the lips or anything like that, that just couldn't happen. I would get this sensitive content, restrictive content, and you can clearly see woman briskly and in a rush is fixing her hair. That's the basic prompt that I would give Veo 3 or 1, 2.5 or pretty much any engine, and it would be against the guidelines. And eventually sometimes I would get some success, but to the point that I got so fed up that I just decided to go to OpenArt for some of the shots where you can actually see the skin. Now, if the person is fully clothed, usually there is no problem. But if you have shots like these where there is a little bit of a skin and you say, look, she moves a little bit in a sensual way, that's an absolute no-go. But eventually you get your shots either through Veo 3.1 or Kling 2.5, because Kling is also a great image generator. And as you can clearly see here, I got my renders. And for the clips that need singing, this is a bit challenging. The clips where she's singing are very short. I mean, we're talking about maybe like 2 seconds, not even that, 1 second. What I would do is I would, for instance, take this clip. I wouldn't just take the 1 second 23. I would give a little bit more so that the clip doesn't end abruptly. And another thing that I did was, rather than feeding the track with the music, I downloaded from audio the voice only. There you go. So that would be my clip. And as you can clearly see here, I set up a folder to Fall AI or Fall AI. So that's the clip that I would feed, and that's the MP3. That is essentially what I did. I went to Fall AI. This is the one that I use for all the lip syncing, and as you can clearly see, I have all the requests here. I've got a number of pages, and what is great about this platform is that it's pay as you go. You top up $20, however much you want to pay, $50, and then it's a pay as you go. You only pay for what you use. You just basically go to the playground, and let's say that we choose this one, 12.2. You choose your video, and then you choose the matching audio. Once you put this information, you press run, and this is so cheap. I think it's 24 cents for each clip, or not even that. It's really, really cheap. So eventually you build your sequence and you get your clips that are lip synced. And from then on, obviously, it's a bit of editing. You need to reshuffle things. You need to look at things, whether they are realistic or not. And I don't want you to think that it was an easy process. For instance, the shot that I set on, look how many different images I created to arrive to that particular shot where she's walking with her entourage, you know. It was just, look how many different renders in different styles until I eventually arrived to this one. Okay, that's the one that I chose. But as you can clearly see, I had a lot of different renders, and also they look very different. You know, this is not a 100% accurate prompting where you put one face and everything is going to look the same. They all kind of look similar, but not quite the same. And I wasn't getting the vibe that I wanted. And also you need to look out also for realistic situations. I mean, I don't think an artist is going to have 2 police officers behind her, and the face here didn't look quite her. The same here, until eventually you arrive to a shot that you go like, oh, actually that looks like my character, and that looks like the type of entourage, private security that I can see an artist having. But as you can clearly see here, there are a lot of renders also using different prompts, different settings. At one point I was supposed to have her singing inside a limousine, but I just didn't feel it was working, so I changed for a shot. At the very end of the process, I changed for a shot where she was leaving a hotel on the way to a concert. And this is how you build it until you eventually arrive to your final timeline where everything has been laid out, all the changes, all the adjustments and everything. And you then grade it, add effects, and then I output this. All in all, it took me about 4.5 hours. If you try and do a shot like this, that shot alone would take half a day or a few hours. If you want to do this by the book, you need to ask permission to the local council to film in that particular road. That alone is going to take you days, if not weeks. If you want to do it with a small camera, you need to then find a road where there is not a lot of traffic, and then 2 or 3 people driving a car. It's just a logistic pain in the rear. This, forget about it. I mean, to rent an airfield to do these kind of shots, that's just not going to happen on an independent music video budget. So to be able to do these kind of shots in just one afternoon is amazing. And all I need to do, and all we need to do, if the label agrees to this, which I don't see why they wouldn't, is to just take some photos of the singer and then place her wherever we want. And if you like what you see and you want to do the same, or you want to create content using AI avatars, I have a course that teaches you absolutely everything step by step using different platforms, and I give you all the prompts that you need to literally copy and paste on ChatGPT or any language model, and then all you need to do is come up with the images yourself. And the perfect example is this video. The person that you see on camera, that's not me, that's my AI avatar, and it looks and talks and sounds just like me. And if I don't tell you that this is an AI avatar, you would probably have no clue whatsoever. And this is what's amazing about this technology, that you can do pretty much anything these days, and it's only gonna get better, faster and more efficient as weeks and months go on. So if you're interested in the course, I'll leave a link in the video description. Sign up. It's currently discounted on a pre-sale until I finish the last module of the course in about 2 weeks time, maybe even less, and then it's gonna go $100 more expensive. So if you wanna grab yourself a bargain, do it now, don't wait for 2 weeks. And once you finish with your timeline, all you need to do is grade it, put some effects, and this is how it looks. And I think that looks absolutely amazing for just 4.5 hours. Imagine what you can do with this technology. If you have 2 or 3 days to refine the images and get the footage right, you can get absolutely amazing footage that not one single person is gonna notice, whether it's AI or reality. And I really hope that you enjoyed this video, that you found it helpful. If you did, give the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. It's really nice to see the numbers going up, and I will see you in the next video.